right. I don't want to keep anybody waiting, so we're going to start off. And I apologize. I think as people join, you're going to keep hearing the little pings. Sorry, I don't know how to turn that off right now. So yeah, let's start. Thank you all for joining. We had about 50 odd people registered for this event. And as promised, for every 25 people, I'm raffling off one book. So that means today I will raffle off two books. And if you are attending live, you are eligible for an extra sort of raffle ticket, so to say. So thank you, everyone. I'm really excited that people are being intentional about their career growth. I think, coming to this session is sort of one of those steps. So my name is Shelby Vaklu. Today, I'm going to provide hopefully some tangible information on how you can go and get that promotion that you deserve. And yeah, let's kick it off. So before we jump in, I just want to take a moment to celebrate an important milestone with all of you. Exactly 1 year ago, I published my book on self-advocacy. This is me at my book launch party. The book went on, thank you. I love the hearts. This is super nice. So the book went on to become a bestseller, which I'm super proud of. But since then, I have worked with many companies as either the companies themselves or with their individuals to empower them with skills that help them advocate for themselves and their teams. So outside of that work stream, I am a former tech executive. I now run my own data consulting practice. So thank you for just being part of my celebration today as well. Today, we're going to walk through my 3-step guide on how to pitch your promotion. We are also going to spend a few minutes reflecting on everything we learn and kicking off your personalized strategy. And finally, I'm going to make sure, like, if you don't get time for Q&A within the 30 minutes, I'll make sure to stay at least 10 minutes beyond for anybody who might have questions that they want to address live. So with that, let's dive right into learning about the 3-step guide. First up, I want to share a more generalized philosophy on self-advocacy that I think applies to a lot of different milestones that you may care about. We have to be comfortable, confident, and genuine in advocating for ourselves. It doesn't matter if it's a promotion, it doesn't matter if it's a raise, a new job, or just seeking out new opportunities or projects that build your skill set. When you build the self-advocacy muscle in a more intentional manner, when you sort of practice it early, it helps you for the moments that matter. And that is what increases your odds of getting the outcomes you want. So I always start with that this is why I feel that normalizing practicing self-advocacy is one of the best career investments that each of us can make. And that's why, based on that philosophy, is sort of the 3-step guide to pitching for a promotion: awareness, documentation, and action. So let's dive into each of these 3 steps. So the first step is just increasing your awareness. And the first part of that is figure out what frameworks already exist in your role, in your company. And so I think in some companies, they have something which is called, it's either called a leveling guide or a career ladder. So it's something that explains that distinction that, like, for example, it's like, okay, and an analyst is expected to have these technical skills, these soft skills, and a senior analyst in comparison would have these other technical skills or soft skills. So it's usually like a little matrix format of something that explains what is expected from people at different levels. And that is, I think, one of the most anchoring pieces of a promotion document. If you know what is expected at the next level, you can work towards it, and you can highlight that I am doing work at that sort of higher level of expectations. So here again, the distinction could be that some companies have it as a company-wide thing, that they have sort of levels, and this is the different expectations. But your own department or your own team could have its own version. So it's perfectly acceptable if you're not aware of this already, but it is a good first question to ask that, hey, I want to know how to grow in my career. So is there something that explains what is expected from people at different levels? And the last piece of the framework itself is that figure out what gets rewarded. So, as you go through things, you're gonna look at examples of other people who are getting promoted. I always love to read those promotion announcements. And sometimes it's not an announcement, it's just like, oh, so and so got promoted. But figure out what gets rewarded, what gets highlighted when people are being promoted to the next level. Those are good guidelines for you to understand what does your boss care about, what does the company care about, and you can try to sort of work backwards from there as well. Oops. Oh, sorry. Okay. Is this working? Oops. Okay. Sorry. It wasn't clicking. All right. So the next step is the people itself. You should always, again, to increase your awareness about figuring out the promotion process, figure out who gets asked for feedback. So most people don't realize this, but promotions are never in silos. Like, it's not like somebody just says, oh, I think this person should be promoted, and that's it. Like that rarely ever happens. There are usually people who are asked for feedback. Now, those people could be other people who are senior to you. Maybe it's your stakeholders, maybe it's your peers. Anybody you collaborate with is typically, and every company has its own sort of guidelines. Like, some might ask, a lot of people, some might ask that, okay, I need at least 3 people who give positive feedback for someone to be considered for promotion. So it's, again, good to figure that out. And again, if it's most likely not going to be a very transparent thing, but it is something that you can at least ask that, hey, who will be asked for feedback if I am put up for promotion. And then besides the feedback piece, there are people who officially need to sign off. Manager is typically a very common person who needs to sign off. It could also be your HR, it could be your department head. So the more information you have about who are the people who matter, you can try to figure out, you can try to work backwards from there. Like, what do you need to do to get those people on board? And then there is the actual timing. So this is something I get a lot of it in my coaching calls. I think I've had a lot of people come through for individual coaching, and they usually say that, oh, I am so shocked that, I thought like I had it in the bag. And then my manager tells me that people only get promoted in January or something like that. So figure out if there is an official calendar for promotion cycles. It could be quarterly, that any time a performance review happens, they basically parse through those performance reviews and say, okay, these are the people who are up for promotion. It could also be that you have a review period. So something like that, once your manager says that I would like to promote this person, there might be sort of a cooling off period where you are under review. And so, it could be something that, okay, even from the moment you submit a promotion, it's still going to take at least 2-3 months for that to be approved. So these are all pieces that you should just know or try to find out, because that then dovetails into the next step, which is documenting your growth. So in this, I'm going to go into each of these subtopics, but the ones on the left are mostly static. They don't really change a whole lot over time. But the ones on the right are the pieces that you should be doing regularly and intentionally, updating your own sort of written documentation that you can then present whenever you feel you are ready for it. So, this piece is maybe a little bit static for the most part, but documenting what is the scope of your role. If you were a new hire, it might the job description that you had might be a starting point. If you were promoted into it, again, like if you have a leveling guide, like that might help you write out, like, these are the business problems that I solve. And more importantly, the sort of how critical your work is, that can be articulated as, if I stop doing my work, this is what stops for the business. So I think it's very powerful to reiterate the value of your role. So you have to tie in your own value to how you execute it, but just the value of the role itself. I was senior director at Strava. Like, this is what I solve, and this is what stops happening if I stop doing my role well. So that is, I think, one piece of the documentation. Then there is the experience part. So your background, your unique qualifications. I think a lot of companies, again, when they are considering promotions, they are looking at it from a lens of, if I had to go out and hire for this role in the market today, how likely is it that I will find somebody out in the wild who will meet these qualifications. So sometimes it's about experience. I think rightfully so, a lot of companies are moving away from the whole educational things like, degree requirements and all that. Like, if you picked up the skills in boot camps, that's fantastic. But the unique qualifications piece is, you may have specific domain expertise that would be high, that would be difficult to go out and find into the market. And I think when you have been in sort of companies that value that specific domain expertise, the longer you are in those companies, the longer you build knowledge, which is very niche. And to find someone new and come and train them, it takes a long time. So I think that is something to leverage. That if you have experience that ties in very specifically to that role, make sure to highlight it. Then there is sort of the time in the role. So this is again a little mostly static piece. I mean, of course, as time goes on, your length in role increases, but time in role is oftentimes a criteria. It's a sort of a, maybe sometimes it's a very explicit criteria. For example, I have worked in companies that had something to the effect of that, if you are if you have not been in a role for at least a year, you cannot be considered for promotion. Again, this was one company, but you can extrapolate on both sides and look at the extreme scenarios. That if you were just hired, it is highly unlikely that you're going to be promoted in 3 weeks. It's not going to happen. It's too little time. And similarly, if you have been in a role for, say, 5 years without a promotion, there is probably something wrong. Like, why have you not been considered for promotion? Is it on them? Is it on you? Like, figure that out. So I think just documenting this sometimes puts it into perspective, especially when you see, when you compare what the company does in general, that, are most people, do they tend to get a promotion within the sort of 2 to 3 year time frame? That's a good argument to sort of use when you're making your own case, and it's not set in stone in any way. The other piece is the peers. So who are other people? Who are your peers in the target role? So this is again something that a lot of companies use. They almost use it as a compare and contrast. That if you're again, the example, if you're an engineer, you're looking at other senior engineers because that's the role you want next. How does their skills, how do their impact compare and contrast with what you're doing? And this is again, a way to put things in perspective, that you're not just talking about a career document or a career sheet. You're talking about actual live examples that, so and so is in this role, and you don't have to call it out explicitly, but it's good documentation for at least yourself to keep in mind. Now we come to sort of more the non-static pieces, like the pieces that you should be recording on a regular basis, so that whenever it comes time to ask for a promotion, pitch for a promotion, you have this document ready to go. Is your track record. So your track record is any time you have something that you consider a win, something that is difficult to do. And this, if you go through my course, or even if you read my book, I talk about this not as a, like do it once piece. Like, I talk about doing this every single week, that every single week you should be noting down the things that you are doing, which are reflective of how good you are at your job. And there are ways to do that. I know it sounds overwhelming, like, oh my God, I have to do this every week. Trust me, if you get into the habit of doing it, it actually comes out pretty well. So you should be noting down, and anytime you actually have a formal promotion packet, you should be noting down the specific wins that demonstrate that you are growing in your career. A lot of companies also have something like company values, that, we as a company value these particular leadership traits. It is great to tie in specific examples back to those company values. Whatever your company says, like, we value authenticity or we value camaraderie, you can say, like, hey, for example, I did this and I worked on this project, and or I, did this other thing, which was not even part of a project, but this is something that demonstrates the values that the company cares about. I think it is important for companies to figure out that you are the type of person who deserves to be promoted because you demonstrate the things that they say that they care about. Next up is the performance reviews. So these are more regular career conversations. And again, in some companies, these are explicit, that every quarter or maybe at least half a year or something, there's a formal performance review. Sometimes you are asked to rate yourself. And, I love those opportunities. I love companies that do that because you are given the opportunity, not even for a promotion, but you are given the opportunity to recap your performance, your projects, your wins in your own words. And your manager can react to that and say that, okay, yeah, this is great, but I need to see more of this other thing. Or your manager can say like, oh yeah, this is good. Like, I kind of knew you did that, but now that you've written it out, it's much easier for me. I know as a manager, I know how many times I have valued hearing directly from my reports about things that they're doing, like even just highlighting specific projects, I think is really great. So use the performance review conversation strategically. Use it to, that is an explicit time at which your manager should be giving you feedback. If they don't give it to you directly, like it is fully within your rights to ask for it and say, hey, I want to grow in my career. Can you give me feedback that helps me go down that path of progress? Then dovetailing from that, like besides your manager, also figure out who are the leaders who will support your promotion. And always look, there is benefit that people have when people see examples of employees who are on the up and up, who are doing good work. There are leaders who are going to align with that and say, I want to support, I think you should be promoted too. So figure out who are the people who, if it comes down to it, you can point them to your manager and say, like, this is a person who supports my promotion, and this is what I would sort of ask them for feedback. But also look at peers. So having peers, people who have similar skills to you, having them be excited about the fact that you might be promoted is very, very strong. It is really seen as a very good signal that there are other people who have similar skills who agree that this person is ready for the next step. So if you can find, if you have peers who like working with you, who are supportive of you, it is great to sort of formally list them as like, this is a person who supports my promotion. And the last piece in the documentation itself is the thing of any kudos that you have received in the past. Anytime somebody expresses a moment of appreciation for your work, maybe they just say like, oh, good job on the project. One, ask them if they'd be comfortable documenting it. If not, document it yourself and just say like, so and so said this on this date for this project. And what the second piece is like, ask them if they'd be open to sharing that feedback directly with your manager. And most of the times people don't mind, like, if they're already happy with your work, they don't mind just sharing it. Some people do that themselves, which is fantastic. The other side of it is anytime you receive critical feedback, that is fantastic. That is also great for you to sort of document. And you can again use that to say that, hey, I received this critical feedback. Here is how I addressed it, and here is how I grew because of it. So it shows that again, you're not just seeking praise, you are seeking critique to better your craft and doing something tangible with that. All right, and with that, we come to step 3. So everything that we did, step 1 was sort of just understanding the process. Step 2 was creating the documentation, mostly for ourselves. But step 3 is actually sharing it. So all the documentation that you might have created in step 2, and there might be other pieces you added to it, figure out like not everything has to be shared. But figure out how to sort of consolidate that documentation and put it in a usable, in a consumable format. Like, what is the story that tells your story in a good way? And again, right now we're focusing on the written part. Of course, it can be verbal. Of course, it can be in a different format. But figure out what is the story that you want to present when you are ready to ask for a promotion. And the second piece is to get help. So find a friend, find a colleague, find maybe somebody in your family or some professional group that you are a part of. Figure out somebody who can give you good advice, who can give you unbiased advice, and just say that, hey, I'm planning to present this as my pitch for a promotion. Can you help me review it? Are there any things that you'd like to share that can help me improve it? So I think it's good to see it from sort of that perspective. And the final piece is to present it. So who do you when you present it, like, maybe it's your manager that you're initially talking to, maybe it's your manager and your HR or somebody else, but it could even be another person who you say that, hey, I would like to begin the conversation of figuring out how to get promoted, and can you help me? So it may not be sort of the final full blown pitch of like, I want to get promoted, here's my pitch. It could be that, hey, I would like to start creating my promotion pitch. So how can you can you sort of help me? Um, and that I sort of cap off the 3-step guide that always be kind to yourself. I always say, like, talk about, when you're talking about your achievements, talk about them in the same voice that your best friend would. Your best friend would never underplay your achievements. Be proud of your achievements. You worked hard for your career. You deserve the sort of wins from it. And the final piece, I always remind people that just because you are advocating for yourself does not mean that you are inconveniencing someone. That is not what this is about. Like, this is about going after what you deserve. It is, it doesn't necessarily automatically mean that, oh, just because you're doing something for yourself, it's a problem for someone else. It's not a zero-sum game. So always remind yourself of this as you sort of go through the process. And with that, now we come to the fun part. So I know there's only a couple of us, so I'd love to hear even one answer from all of you. But I always think it's good to have at least one thing that you sort of leave with, which is very tangible. So if you could read through the questions, and I'll give you a minute to reflect on it. But if you had to pick, like, I always like starting with the why. Like, why is getting promoted important to you? And maybe you're comfortable sharing that, maybe you're not, that's totally fine. But I do think that it is very important to articulate our why. It makes it a lot easier when we run up against against issues that are hard to navigate. I think the what, like, if you can think of even one example from, say, the last week, of something that you did at work which is worth celebrating, I'd love for you to share that if you would like. And if not, like, I think the who is easy to share. Like, can you think of at least one person, just any one person? Maybe it's maybe it's your colleague, maybe it's your friend, maybe it's your spouse. But is there one person that you can think of who can actually help you? And the aim of this is to, one, I hope some of you feel comfortable sharing it in the chat. It's to also kind of hold each other accountable, that, when you put it in writing and other people have seen it, even if we never see each other again, there is a little bit of pressure that comes and says that I did take step one. And then hopefully that encourages you to take step two. So, yeah, if anybody is comfortable sharing it in the chat, I'll just give you maybe just under a minute.
Hi, Shelby. I think,
Hi.
first of all, a great content. Um, I'll start with why. Why is getting promoted important to you?
Yeah.
I would just say that, of course, all of us, we have our goals.
Yeah.
This is one way to reflect on it and to get that validation as well, in terms of, it's also a validation on the retrospective that I usually do, that what I feel I am capable of and what I deserve and what I should be getting. This is part of that exercise as well. Even
Yeah.
if, let's say, at the end of the pitch of getting promoted, even if I'm not getting there, that's a good validation and retrospective to think about and course correct and then again attempt.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Lippy. And I completely, like, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I agree with you. Like, I think thinking of it as a retrospective is a very good idea. because you can course correct, as you mentioned. And sometimes even when you ask for something, even if you don't get what you wanted out of it, just the fact that you asked puts intention behind it for the future. And sometimes even the answer that you get, even if it's a no, it's still an answer, because at least you know what is true in your sort of current format.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing. And yeah, thank you. Again, I hope everybody considers doing this exercise, like at least at the end. Like, feel free to just write down answers to any one of these questions, and I think that will be fantastic.
Yep.
With that, I would say that so this is the end. Thank you all for joining this lightning talk. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please do send me a note on LinkedIn. I really very much appreciate any feedback that you can share. So this QR code will link you out to a few additional resources on self-advocacy, as well as an overview of my offerings in case you want to invite me for a talk to your employee resource group at your organization. Today, you will receive an email with today's recording. It'll have a discount code for my course on Maven as well. It starts in less than a month, and reimbursement templates are available. So with that, I'm going to move over to what people are saying in the chat, but I'm going to stick around for 10 minutes. If you need to leave, if you have another meeting, totally get it. Feel free to go for it. But I am going to stick around for another 10 minutes. In case anybody has questions that they would like addressed live, I am happy to discuss them. And if you want, I can also pause the recording at that point, because I know some people don't want their questions recorded. That's totally fine. I can pause the recording, and that should be okay too. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate you kind of coming for this event. Thank you. All right. Miguel, so you have a quick question: how to institute a promotion framework at smaller companies, less than 20 people. Oh, that's great. So you are likely going to be the first one advocating for yourself and others. That is a great question. And just for background, I have mostly worked for startups my entire career. I think it is tough, like when you have a very, very small team. I think the general philosophy behind why should, when it's just a 20-person company, why do you even need a promotion, right? Like, your responsibilities may not sort of widely change. I think the best argument I can make for that is that companies, like even smaller companies, if you want more people to come into that company eventually, they want to see that people who are in higher sort of positions are showcasing that higher level of work that is exciting to them. Like, you want to have good examples that even in a small company there is examples of growth that people can start. Again, at the analyst level, grow up and grow on. So how you would implement a promotion framework itself is, again, starting with the career ladder. If you don't already have one, and if you're the first one advocating for it, you can frame it as like, hey, we know we're going to hire more people later. So how do we map this out so that the process stays sort of the same as we grow? And it's not even about promoting people. It's like, when we hire new people, how do we differentiate between the expectations at different levels? So you can start by saying, I'm going to help the company create a careers ladder, which is what is expected at different levels of seniority. And that could be sort of the first step. Uh, Hopefully that answered your question. Priyanka, your question is, when we talk about the brag hype document, what's the level of granularity that you can keep it in? Some good examples would be really helpful. That's a fantastic question. So I would say that when you are writing it for yourself, I think at that level, like when it's just for yourself, like, write down details, write down what you did. Like, let's say you do it weekly, so what did you do and what impact did it have? Those two pieces should definitely be in there. When you are presenting the document to somebody, you should go one level up and break it down into themes. Go back to your career leveling guide, for example, and say, just as an example, like if it says, this is the skill, like collaboration is a skill, or coding is a skill, then you say that, okay, within coding, I can give examples of these 5 projects where I did this and I had this impact. always bring things back to impact. When you can show dollars are moved because of your work, that is very, very compelling argument. And when you're presenting it to people, you want to break it down into themes of those things. Awesome. Great, Miguel. Thanks. Glad it was helpful. Any other questions?